Hey, everybody. This is a top secret special episode of the Surf and Sales podcast because my normal co host, Scott Leese, is not here with us today. However, substituting in, without him knowing about it, are his entire family: his brother, Taylor Leese, his father, Dr. Professor Wally Walter Leese, right? And his mother, Angela Leese. So thank you guys for coming on to do this. I know I sprung this on all of you very last minute, so thank you. I'm glad you guys could do this. Mm-hmm. So the goal of this is like we're not here to roast Scott. I'm sure some fun stories will come up, but I just want to get to know him a little bit. You know, he's created this social media presence about him, and so I'm curious. Like, was Scott always the guy? And any of you can answer this, but was he always the guy who wanted attention on himself, or did he not? Or does he like to play that game of, I don't want the attention, but in reality, he really wants the attention?
Who wants to go with that?
I think he was always a leader and preferred to be out front and had the ability to have people follow. So I'm not surprised that he has a bunch of followers in his social media.
Yeah.
I would say that he was a bit like a magnet. People were drawn to him. And,
That's so true.
And for whatever reason, people would be drawn to him, and sort of organically, he would end up sort of leading. And that sometimes that took a like more official form in terms of like sports or whatnot. But even in like social circles and whatnot, people just kind of gravitated towards him.
And that's how I met him. I met him that way. And as soon as both of you say that, I get it. What about you, Angela? What is your?
Well, I think, at a very young age, Scott and his brother are just about 4 years apart. I always remember just as a very young age, all the boys in the neighborhood would always seem to come to our home, and Scott seemed to be the one directing the activity. And it's not like he necessarily asked for them to come and direct. It's just that, like Taylor said, he was kind of like the magnet.
Yeah, he has the Kavorka, right? Like that's sort of, from Seinfeld, right? He has.
Yeah.
What was he always super athletic as a kid? Was he always a sports kid? Did he just sort of come out swinging a baseball bat, so to speak?
I can speak to that because when he was about, I think, 2 years old, one of my relatives died I'm from Niagara Falls, New York. And we flew back, and I remember we stayed at my parents' home, and my father was a sports nut. And I remember Scott had a baseball bat, a Nerf, kind of one of those plastic bats with a ball. And he was in the backyard, and my father was pitching the baseball to him in the backyard. And Scott hit it so hard, he broke the kitchen window. And instead of my father being angry, he was thrilled. Right. Because he said, "Did you see that kid? He hit it so hard, he broke the window."
So, Taylor, how was it? Did you ever feel like you were living in the shadow of Scott at all? And I mean that in an endearing way, not like jealousy. Mom and dad don't love me as much, But I get the impression that you guys have a very close relationship and that you guys are pretty tight.
I would say that there was a bit of like expectations that I would be pretty decent at certain sports based upon Scott being pretty good at certain sports. And hopefully I lived up to that. I think we were both like pretty successful in soccer and tennis, and Scott had some days playing basketball and whatnot. So he was known as an athlete, and I'd like to think that I kind of just followed suit rather than played in the shadows.
And were you okay with that? Were you like, Scott, like, who would, in your heyday, right? You're both, 17 or 18. Who would win at tennis or soccer? You or him, or was it pretty even?
He probably would have beaten me at tennis. Soccer is kind of hard to tell because it's not like one-on-one. He had more of a leadership presence, and I was kind of just like we were both captains, but we were captains in very different ways. Like we lead in very different ways. You know, he's more like front and center, and I'm more like individually one-on-one with people leading. Yeah.
I always like to say that Taylor was more the Roger Federer of sports. He was a quiet destroyer. And Scott was always more animated, maybe brought out the Italian in him. I'm not sure.
Was he the John McEnroe of sports then? Was he?
I don't know if he was
crazy.
I don't think it was that crazy, but they definitely, as brothers, were both very talented, but had different styles as to how they went about their sports.
And look, as the father of two boys, that's all we can ask for, right? Is they each find their own, right? And they can each be good at their own.
Yeah, I think that as parents, we tried to recognize that they both had their strengths and sometimes, you know, in different ways. You know.
When did you first notice, and this is for the parents more, but when did y'all first notice just how competitive Scott was? Like it's he doesn't just dislike to lose. It's almost like an obsession to not lose. And if he does, he literally will, you know, he would fall on the sword, right? Before he'd lose, kind of a thing. Was he like that as a kid?
Wally, do you want to answer that?
Well, I spent a lot of hours with both of my sons doing sports sort of things. So because initially they were just with me, I don't think I noticed any real competitive, because when Taylor was old enough, the two of them would play against me. We had a unique living room when they were young. We had no furniture, a carpet, and a soccer goal at each end. And I got to play on my knees, and they played two against Dad, and they hated to lose to Dad. And so yes, they were both very competitive.
Did you?
A little different style. Scott is a little more in your face competitive, and Taylor's a little more sneaky finesse. So, different.
Were you the kind of dad who would let them win, or was it like, nope, you're not getting a goal unless you get it?
The older they got, the harder they had to work to win. Let's put it that way.
That's really, really cool.
We, as a family, Richard, though, it wasn't always just sports, because we did a lot in those days. We did a lot of games as far as board games, right, Taylor? We would sit and even with board games, whether it was Monopoly or there was this game Acquire, they both wanted to win. I mean, so I don't know if it was just innate. It's just innate.
I mean, Richard, even like trading baseball cards, Scott wanted to win.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Really?
Like,
oh my God.
There was a winner and a loser in the trades, right? And so
Yeah.
like you know, Monopoly.
Dad had to be custodial.
Anything.
Dad had to be the custodial of the baseball cards many times to make sure that somebody's didn't get shifted from one pile to the other pile and the war broke out.
So
There was one group that I was in charge of, and they had the other ones, but they were both very competitive.
that's really fun. Those are the stories like we want to remember, right?
One story I think is of interest that you might like about Scott. I was coaching soccer, and Scott played in the soccer game, and he was complaining about his ankle, or his foot hurting, not his ankle, his foot hurting. And took True out, looked at it, seemed fine to me, and he played like 2 more games. I think we even got to the championship game. I don't remember if we won or not. So on the way home, we drove to the hospital to have his foot x-rayed, which was broken. He had a stress fracture in his foot. All right, so he never forgets to remind me that I made him play in several games with a broken foot.
I got news for you. He never forgets to remind me about that story. He
Is that
loves.
He told you that?
He then,
Oh, I've heard that story like 5 times. I've heard it.
So-
You know.
Okay, so here's what happened after that. So we get to the doctor, and they said, well, we can put it in a brace that you can take on and off. And I said, no, cast it, because I knew we could never keep him off of his foot.
Right.
So they put it in a cast, and he was playing basketball at that time, and his team was in a tournament, which we went to watch, he and his cast. And his coach came over to me at halftime and said, they have a 3-point shooting contest in this tournament. Do you think he would be interested in doing that? And I said, well, he has a cast on his foot. So they went over and asked Scott, and Scott said, sure. And my recollection is that he came in second in that with a cast on, and everybody was cheering for this poor kid that was out
a
there.
hobbled child. Right.
Yeah, that was, I think that was junior high school, wasn't it?
It was about 7th or 8th grade.
Mhm.
That's hilarious. That's
But
funny.
I just have to add, though, that Taylor played a soccer game at a young age, too, and he, years later, showed me his finger, which was broken and still crooked because he never told anybody that he broke his finger. So
He's
Yes, both sons are competitive.
yeah. That's Taylor saying I'm tougher than my brother, right?
well, he did have a higher pain tolerance, probably. Probably still does. I don't know.
So I have a question for you, Angela. So were you an athlete growing up as a young girl, a young woman? Did you play sports at all, or no?
In my era, and I lived back east where the weather wasn't that great anyway, I did not play sports. But I have to say that as an only child, my father was an avid sports person. And I watched a lot of sports, and we would go to all the college basketball games. So I think I'm fairly savvy about sports, but I didn't necessarily start playing sports. I loved just being outdoors growing up. I started playing racquetball when Wally and I were married. We moved to Arizona, and I started playing racquetball, and then he introduced me to tennis. And so I've been playing tennis for the last 30 years. So, but I love sports, and I think I'm fairly knowledgeable. I even won fantasy football one time league in Scott's league.
Oh wow, he is not.
That's going back a long time.
I bet he
I'm
didn't
gonna
tell you
have to
that.
go back and ask him about that. That's fantastic. So how was it? Again. So here you are, Angela. You're knowledgeable in sports, but here you are with these 3 guys in a house of 3 boys, and it's a lot of sports going on, right? How did you manage that as a mom and a wife, through all this? Or was that's just what it was? Like that was normal for us?
I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I had a lot of cousins around me growing up. When I had Scott, it was a huge adjustment because I didn't have any siblings. But then, we had Taylor, and then it just seemed that, like going back to what we said, where Scott was kind of a magnet, all the neighborhood boys were always coming to our house to play. And over the years, those boys kind of became second sons in a way. I just, because I like sports so much, I didn't mind it. So it was just really wonderful.
When you think about Scott's career growth, right? What are the things that has surprised you the most? He was on this trajectory. He shares that, his mind was he was going to be a professional soccer player, right? Like that was sort of really where his heart was, at least in the storytelling he does to me. What are the things that, you've been surprised that, oh, wow, that's interesting, or maybe it didn't surprise, maybe none of this stuff surprises you at all, because he's been very successful.
Are you asking me, Richard, or anyone?
All of you. So.
Taylor, why don't you answer that one? Because you are very successful yourself.
Sorry, Taylor, I promise I'm not trying to make it all about your brother. It's not the intent.
No. I think that I was initially surprised he got into sales because his educational background is really nothing to do with sales. He has a psychology degree and a master's degree in instructional technology, right? So it doesn't necessarily like scream sales at you. But when he got into it, I think he just realized that he was naturally good at connecting with people and building rapport with people. And then he just wanted to win, right? And so he wanted to be top of the sales list, right? And so I think that just kept progressing, right? He wanted to be top of the sales list. Then he wanted to be the manager with the best team. And then he wanted to be the like senior manager, like group lead with the best teams, right? And it just kept going.
Yeah, I kind of feel that his sports background, being a leadership in sports, got him the sort of social and communication skills to help him survive through the early days of sales. And he's kind of a generalist, doesn't pay too much attention to details, where Taylor is much more detail oriented. But when he got into the sales management and he needed to find ways to track the people who were now under him, he got pretty detailed with a bunch of Excel spreadsheets to keep track of everybody's progress and success and lack of success. And so I'm very pleased and amazed, because I absolutely could not do what he does. I could have done what Taylor does, I think, but I could never do what Scott.
I couldn't do either what either one of my sons could do.
I think one of the things is that the reason, I mean, here's the theory on like why he's a magnet, right? Is that Scott will tell you what he actually thinks and not necessarily what you want to hear. And if you do that enough with good intentions, people start to trust you, and they start to learn, and they start to grow, and so they're drawn to you, and they want more feedback, right? And I think that just kind of came naturally to Scott. I think even like as a kid, he would kind of just like, he would blurt out these pieces of feedback, and you didn't realize when you're like 12 years old that it was a piece of feedback. And then there's always, he has this ability to like hold you to high expectations. And so people want to sort of live up to those expectations. Like I remember when I started playing tennis again, like 4 or 5 years ago, I started doing well in some of these tournaments, and he's like, let me know when you win like the higher division. Not like good job. It was like, let me know when you win the next one. Right. And so like, you know,
he was even trying to coach.
He kind of pulls people up. Right.
Yeah, wasn't he even trying to coach you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Is that a Scott thing, or is that really coming from Wally? Like, did Wally, did you do that to the boys? Like, hey, yeah, okay, but you know, let me know when you actually win.
I don't. I wasn't all about winning. I was about getting better. So I'm never really big about killing somebody. So in tennis, you beat somebody 6-0, 6-0. To me, that's a wasted match, because it didn't challenge you. You probably didn't learn anything out of that. So I definitely would try to progress them up, but I don't know that I said, well, I'm not going to count that because it was lower level sort of thing.
I think as a parent, and I think Wally will agree, you know, for both of our sons, is that we do the same ourselves. We just wanted them to try their best. You know, as long as they tried their best, we're proud of them. And the one thing I want to add about Scott, and I noticed this just getting back to when he was initially sick, and I don't want to talk too much about that, but what I noticed really, what was very profound to me, was that I noticed he could make very difficult decisions quickly, where I would contemplate and dissect things, you know, but he was able to take in the information, and rather than ponder it forever, he was able to make quick decisions. And I remember telling him that. I said, I am amazed that you can make that decision so quickly. And these were difficult decisions.
Yeah. I mean, and Scott's pretty open about what he's had to go through. He's talked about the
But I think that probably is, you know, how he has helped him become successful in his sales career.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, all of these things that you're sharing, you know, there's to some extent, there's no surprise that I've heard yet, right? Like it all aligns. So, but I do want to go back to what Wally said. I can literally hear Scott and see him hearing you say that, you know, 6-0, 6-0 doesn't count. That's a weight. Like I can see Scott, you know, doing his whole Scott reaction, hearing you say that right now, because he's like, what do you mean I didn't learn anything? I learned how to beat somebody 6-0, 6-0. Like
Scott would love to beat somebody 6-0, 6-0. I'm not sure about Taylor. Would you like to beat somebody 6-0, 6-0?
Every once in a while, but not routinely, you know.
Not about the winning, it's about whether they're challenged, I think. So I just want to be challenged. One thing I feel helped Scott was since he had, some early troubles and stumbles and that sort of thing, that he seemed to be very open-minded and willing to try to find people who were struggling and help give them a second chance and convince them that if they worked hard, then there was a good chance of being successful. And I think a lot of those people appreciated that. And like Taylor said, he was therefore able to challenge those people, and those workers would work up to his level of expectations.
Yeah. Was Scott was he like the popular kid in high school, or was he just a well-known kid that everybody kind of liked? What was he like back in high school?
I think he was a well-known athlete, but I wouldn't necessarily say he was like the most popular kid around. It's not, he was like the
homecoming king. He was never homecoming king.
Not like that. Yeah. But definitely had a large circle.
So, what do you guys want? And maybe they already know, maybe they've asked, but what do you want Caleb and Braden to know about their dad? Like from their dad's childhood? What's something you'd like, here's something you may not know about your dad.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I don't have any easy answer from my standpoint.
Yeah, I wish I could give you an answer, Richard. I think that they probably know their father pretty darn well. And I think because we've talked so openly about Scott when he was younger and all the sports, I'm not sure that, I think it's harder too because we don't live near him. So
right.
we don't see the boys on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So I think that he really has, he's a really good father in that he really tries to stay involved. And he's enjoyed the coaching, since he can't, for physical reasons, do all the sports that he would like to continue to do.
Right.
He's using that energy to help his sons.
And he wants to win when he's coaching. I think he's.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I'm thinking he's vicariously living through them, like that he's playing sports through them. Mm-hmm. He loves the competitiveness of it.
I know. I've had that conversation with him, and I 100%.
And I think he also, expects, like Wally has said, I think Scott would probably tell his sons, and like I said, I haven't heard him say it because I'm not right there, but that he expects his sons to try in everything that they do. They don't necessarily have to win. They don't necessarily have to get the highest grade, but they have to make an effort. And I know that, it's very important that they treat others kindly.
Yep.
So I know one thing, when if I couldn't make a sports event that my sons were in, when I would see them, I would always ask how they did. And they would usually tell me whether they won or lost. And I said, I didn't ask that question. I wanted to know, how do you feel you did in the particular game? So I think that sort of background in Scott is partly why he is the way he is with his two boys, that he wants them to succeed and realizes that it's more important to work hard and be tenacious at something as opposed to just try to rely on straight athletic ability. So Caleb in particular has tremendous athletic ability, and even when I try to help him, he'll just go like, why do it this way? Because it's easier.
Right.
So he's harder to coach, where Braden's a little easier to coach because he's not quite as gifted, but still has that tenaciousness and willing to try hard and work hard. And I think he does quite well.
Yeah.
So
Braden's definitely the thinker, right?
Yep. They're both smart.
I spent with him. He wants to outthink somebody and win, right? He puts that piece, at least that's what I've seen in him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting you say that too about whether it was the part about giving second chances or asking how you did. I've seen him do that in the business world. He's easily translated that to not how did the call go, but how do you think you did? What do we need to work on? How can I help you get better? Right. So I think that's clearly coming down through the Leese legacy. So well done to the parents on that.
Thank you.
Couple of questions that I actually had from some of Scott's friends. So if we were going to make a movie about Scott, who would play Scott Leese?
Jesus. I'm so terrible with actors. I don't even know if I can even have a chance in this one.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the only one that has a chance of answering this question is going to be Angela.
Well, no, I mean, if I was going back to maybe his high school, college days, I'm going to embarrass him with this one. He had the most gorgeous long blonde hair. He was like a god. I would say, you asked if he was popular. The girls loved him.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair that his hair was prettier than mine. That wasn't fair. Well, Taylor too, but anyway. But I would say because of his love of music and bands and things like that, and he actually taught himself how to play the guitar in college. I don't know the names of a lot of people, but I would say who would play him would be somebody who was musical.
All right.
And he actually wrote poetry, and an anonymous, he didn't put his name to the poetry. He wrote poetry and had it published in high school.
Oh, wow. That's something that I've never heard that one. That's something.
Yeah, I can't remember the newspaper. It was a local paper. I don't know if Taylor remembers, but yeah, he wrote some poetry, and he used to have a journal, and he would write things in that. But Scott has a very musical, creative side, and he did some artwork in college. So so I'm sorry I didn't specifically answer your question, but he does have that musical theater kind of side. Not that he would perform. He had a college band. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. What was the name of the band?
Oh yeah. I don't know. I don't remember the name of the band, but when he was at
there was two. I think there was at least two. The first one was wasn't it like Speakeasy or something like that?
Oh, I think so. Speakeasy.
And then the
they
second
played
one
in
was,
Dominican in San Rafael, California, and he was a guitar player, and he sang a little bit.
yeah, played the bass. And then the other one was Clever Linus.
Yeah, Clever Linus, I remember.
Yeah.
So
In fact, I wore the
He has one CD. I still have it. They produced
I
one
want that.
CD.
Oh, I gotta get that. Oh, there's a bounty out for that one.
That'll cost you a lot.
It'll cost you, but I do have his CD of Clever Linus.
So I appreciate if you're not gifted in the acting world, but Taylor or Wally, what kind of person or who do you think would play, Scott Leese? Would it be a Willem Dafoe, a Brad Pitt, a Tom Cruise? Would it be,
I really have no clue, because I have a great knack for not remembering a single name of any actor or actress.
All right.
Except
I'm gonna blame my success or lack thereof of this topic on my dad, because I'm in the same exact boat. I'm sorry I'm ruining your question. I just don't know. I don't even know who the first actor is that you mentioned.
I can add one thing. This was before Scott had the beard, which that's another subject.
But he learned that from his dad. So
this is the first time in my life I've ever had a beard. I locked up and I said, why am I shaving every day?
Right.
I'm not going anyplace, so the heck with that. So I quit. And then as soon as Scott saw I had a beard, he started growing his back again.
Yeah, but there was a time when Scott didn't have the beard. Then I think I sent a picture and I said he looked like Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
There was something about his face that
We used to give him a lot. When I first met Scott, we gave him the Lance Armstrong when he had his hair.
Oh
short.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now that you mention that, that's true.
Yeah, that was the one. What and some of this is competitiveness, but even through the medical stuff Scott went through, for me, some of that's competitive, right? Like he needs to know. He said to me, like, just tell me, what do I need to know to get through today? And he'll fight through. But aside from being competitive around that, there's a tremendous level of tenacity in him. Was he always that tenacious as a kid? Is that something that also runs? I mean, Taylor, I'll assume you have it too. I know you a little bit, not as well as I know Scott, but you're not certainly not one to give up either, from what I know.
Well, let me tell a little story about my dad's nickname in college. So, can I tell the story? So, my dad's nickname in college was American Mule, right? So it's a little stubborn, right? And so I think that translated to boys that are very, very persistent. I wouldn't say either one of us are particularly patient, but we're super persistent.
That's fair. So
yeah, I was a sort of student in college that if I couldn't figure out, I would work until I fell asleep in the desk. All right, trying to figure out the solution to some homework problem, accounting problem, or math problem that I was working on. I would finally give up, go to bed, wake up 2 or 3 hours later and say, oh, I didn't try this. And I'd sit down and write it down, and my roommate would always go, would you just go to bed?
Right. So where did you get that from? Was your mom or dad that way?
I don't know. I again think it's just the plain sports background that, you just sort of get used to, no matter what the competition is, that you're always trying to hang in there and be competitive. And I just think as you play, particularly like tennis and soccer, those are pretty long events. They're not short events, that you have to have that kind of tenacity, and it goes on. I can remember one match when Taylor was actually playing in a tournament, and I think Taylor was maybe 10 years old, and Scott either had already finished his match or his match was coming up next. And we were sitting in California here, and it was like 102 in the shade. And Taylor had decided that the best way to beat this person was just to keep returning the ball. And Scott would yell at him all the time, "Will you hit the ball? Hit the ball," because Scott wanted to end the point. And Taylor said, no, I can beat this person if I just outlive him, basically. And it went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So there's a difference in style there, but I think that sort of background from tennis and soccer and to some extent basketball for Scott was a big factor of just building that sort of work ethic into his personal habit and environment. Yeah. And I think they got used to seeing me work all the time. The one thing I knew my kids would never be would be a teacher, because they told me one time, I can't remember which one, I'm thinking it's Scott, but it might have been Taylor, so I don't remember which one, said, the one thing I know, because I asked them, what are you going to do when you get done with college? And their answer was, well, the one thing I know I'm not going to do is teach. And I said, why is that? And he said, because you're never done.
Yeah, so, that hasn't changed. They're both teaching.
Yep.
Right? They're both in leadership roles. They're both teaching. They're probably like me, where we turn off the computer because our significant others are wise enough to say, okay, put it away. It's time to stop. So I see that very, very much so. What so we're gonna sort of wrap it up here, because I know it's I appreciate all the time you guys have done in getting this done, but any sort of obviously happy birthday to Scott. We love you. I know you're going to be shocked by this. Hope it comes across the right way, buddy. But if not, oh well. Sorry, Scott. Not sorry. Any last thoughts about Scott? Something you think you'd like to share just with people, or just even from your heart that you want to say to Scott for his birthday, because this is for his birthday.
Well, I told you that I might cry, so.
Going for it.
Well, the one thing that Scott always tells me is that I'm overly sentimental. I'm like way too sentimental, so I am. But I have a philosophy in that you can never say I love you too much. And this is where I tell both of my sons that I just love them beyond words. And I am extremely proud of both of them, but since this is for Scott on his birthday, I just love him and respect so much how he's handling all the adversity and all the positive things and that he's done in his life, and that the father and the man that he's become. And anyway, I'm just very proud of him, and I couldn't love him more. I just wish that we could spend more time together. That's all, anyway.
And we're trying to get them back to California too, just so you know. Like Kathy and I want them to move, at least to Moraga, right? We'll take anywhere, but
that'd work.
So.
Yeah, Taylor's trying that, I know.
Yeah, I think one thing that I didn't touch on earlier, and I think it's important to call out, is I think one of the things I respect about Scott is that I think he's really changed a lot of people's lives. Like, I think that, like my dad mentioned, that he really, even when he's hiring for sales roles, I don't know what his current strategy is, but like at certain points in time, he would look for people that really like went through a series of struggles because he knew they would fight, and he gave people chances. And some of those people are, managers and VPs and took off. And some of these people had, other people wouldn't give them a chance. Right. And so I think he can see the good in people, and can kind of separate the past from like what you can do starting now.
Yeah, he is good at that. I agree with you.
And I think, and as a parent, I just want to add that as a parent, I feel really proud that Wally and I did something right, and that we have two sons that really respect and admire one another. And I can just speak for myself that I know that Taylor really loves his brother, and vice versa.
Yeah, I don't remember why we had that discussion, but Angela and I were talking the other day, just saying how we were lucky that both sons got along and they seemed to love each other and respect each other. And there were several examples that we came up with of people who I didn't even know they had a brother for maybe 10 or 15 years after.
Right. We just talked about
knowing
that.
the person, because they don't speak to that brother. And I'm going like, seriously, how do you do that? I have two brothers, so to me, that's just, I don't know how you can ignore people. And even if you got mad at them and were irritated, you have to eventually reconcile that issue that's there, where our sons would have little minor disputes, but that would be about it. And they, no matter how mad one got at the other one, they would get over it quickly, and off they'd go like nothing happened. And so we're thankful for that. And they both know that both Ange and I love them dearly. And I'm not much of a verbalizer in general, even though I'm a teacher, but when it gets talking about how I feel about people, they just have to know how I treat them, mm-hmm. and how I respect them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the verbalizer.
I get it.
I said, I'll never get an ulcer. I just give them to everybody else.
Taylor said, I'm not much of a talker, Richard, when you do this. So I don't know how much do I have to talk and how much do I have to sit there. So I get it. And, it's funny because I don't know. I know Angela knows this because she's heard the story, but Scott, to Wally and Taylor, that Tony Marshall once tried to introduce me to Scott to get me to hire him. I wouldn't even talk to Scott. So this is before Scott and I ever really knew each other. So, I wouldn't give Scott the chance that Scott would give to all these other people. And so I agree with you 100% on that one, Taylor, of it is something to admire and to look at, because, just imagine what the world would be if we could get more of that going on.
And I always felt the situations where I would see him do that, it wasn't just that he would hire them. He would, as Taylor said, sort of guide them and get them to buy into his particular approach and way of attacking a problem. And they would just, and not all of them, but a large percentage of them would just turn their life around. Yep. And I think that's why he still draws a lot of people in social media. A lot of people, once they're friends with Scott, they seem to be friends for life.
Yeah, I've always told him he collects disciples.
But that's a good way of putting it.
all the way back to his childhood is that he just had that gravity pull that you were talking about earlier. Is that, and you know, when you interact with Scott, it's hard not to like the guy or want to like him, the guy. Like there's just
he has a good childhood friend that he's still friends with, but that friend calls Scott Grandpa.
Oh yeah.
Because he kind of takes care of everybody.
A little bit.
That was a college nickname too, Grandpa.
Oh,
Was it?
Yeah.
That was actually a good question. What other nicknames did he go by? Scooter or anything like that? Was there something fun?
Grandpa or Lease or I don't know. Well, I'm not sure.
Taylor would know nicknames more than us.
Just Grandpa is the only popular one I know of.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for hanging out and doing this with me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But thanks for taking us down memory lane a little bit. And Scott, my unblood brother, happy birthday, my man. I hope it's a good one.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Happy
son.
birthday, Scott. We love you.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks,
bye
everybody.
Richard.
Bye-bye now.